Neymar down. Ooh. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Messi is down again for Argentina.
From an injury that almost killed Messi to footballers having to fight for their families on the pitch. These are the 25 scariest moments in football, and first up, it's the day Messi almost died. See, Messi was playing for Barcelona in a must-win game versus Juventus in the Champions League. They'd lost the first leg 3-0 away from home, so at the Nou Camp, Messi and the rest of his teammates were determined to put on a rescue act and save the game. Particularly Messi. He was extra fired up and going for every ball like his life depended on it. Until one time he rose up to contest for an aerial ball, and the way he landed, it could have killed him. At half-time, the doctors examined him, and that's when they realized if Messi had landed any lower to the left, he could have snapped his neck on the field at that moment. Damn, this one sends chills down my spine. It's like the Fernando Torres incident all over again. 2017, Torres was playing for Atletico Madrid away from home versus Deportivo. Atleti was chasing the game, and with a guy like Torres on the bench, he was a game changer waiting to make an impact. Pretty soon, Atleti's head coach Diego Simeone signaled for Torres to warm up and get into the action, a decision he wishes he'd never made, because only a few minutes later, the game went into panic mode. The collision left Torres unconscious. He was immediately rushed to the hospital and thankfully came out okay. Torres remembers the whole thing and gives thanks. The day Petr Cech almost died, he doesn't even remember at all. 2005, Chelsea versus Reading. What was supposed to be a normal game in the league ended up becoming a horror show for everyone involved. Just 26 seconds into the match, Cech came out to grab a ball and prevent Reading's Stephen Hunt from getting a shot at goal. Cech got there first, but with the speed and momentum Hunt used in chasing this one, he clashed with Cech. Scratch that, his knee went into Cech's skull, and Cech was out cold. He'd suffered a fractured skull, and only a few hours later, Cech had to have surgery on it. He too came out okay, but the damage was so crazy that he doesn't remember what happened, and had to wear that iconic mask throughout the rest of his career. It's one thing to have an injury almost ruin your career as a pro, but it's another thing to be fighting for your life because of it. In 2019, Mesut Ozil and Sead Kolasinac were still teammates at Arsenal when they both made plans to see each other. Ozil and his wife drove up to meet Kolasinac in London, but as they got to the venue, instead of Kolasinac entering the vehicle, something strange happened. Two men came out of nowhere and attacked them. The case was so severe that Kolasinac tried to fight off the guys, got into Ozil's car and left, but they chased after them and damaged the car. In the end, the suspects were caught and charged to court. But just thinking how it could have been a lot worse if they had fired weapons is scary as hell. Some fans are simply wild, like the guy who almost took Jack Grealish's head off. Aston Villa versus Birmingham City in 2019, the West Midlands derby. And as a captain of his Villa team, Grealish knew just how important this game was. In his mind, he was ready for it, and what the away fans could attempt to put up. But I don't think anything would have prepared him for what happened minutes after kickoff. This guy came out, escaped security, and clobbered him in the head. I told you some fans are wild. Heck, they do it everywhere, from Birmingham to the Bernabeu. Real Madrid now, and in 2014, after losing El Clasico to Barcelona, the Madrid players and the fans were hurt. After the game, most of the Madrid players got into their cars heading home, but just outside the exit, two fans had waited behind to let them know how they really felt about the match. Look at that, they waited just to verbally attack them, even tried to damage a vehicle in the process. I'd bet they didn't try any funny business with Pepe's car. And now this guy, when he flips the switch, it's one of the scariest things you'll see. 2009, Pepe was playing for Real Madrid in a crucial game against Deportivo La Coruña in the league. Madrid was fighting for the league title and needed to win to keep up, but minutes before the end, Pepe gave away a penalty that would have all but confirmed Madrid's defeat in the match. The problem is, Pepe didn't think it was a clear plan. He felt the Deportivo player Javi Cascado and deceived the ref by faking a foul. And so just before he left the field, Pepe hit his off switch and went completely brutal on the guy. Ouch, man, ouch. Some tackles make you think twice about engaging in the sport, like Pepe's loose one here, or the time Sadio Mane almost took out Ederson's head. Liverpool versus Manchester City in 2017 at the Etihad. Mane was pumped. This was a big game, and both teams didn't want to lose. So when Mane got a chance early on and looked through on Manchester City's goal, City's goalie Ederson came rushing out, looking to block the shot. But Mane's speed was just too much for him to slow down or hit the brakes, and the way he clashed into him, yikes, almost took his head off. The tackle looks worse in slow motion. At least Ederson didn't have to leave the pitch in blood, or wear a mask, like Kylian Mbappe. At the opening game of this summer's Euros, Mbappe was carrying the flag for France. Everyone was expecting him to deliver or put on a show in the match against Austria, but he'd been quiet so far, until he decided to up the ante and went in for a challenge with Kevin Danso. The thing is, the challenge was the type of ball you call a 50-50. High risk reward stuff. And let's just say it didn't pay off for Mbappe, because in the end, what he came out with was this. A bloodied nose. At the time, there were genuine fears that Mbappe's Euro competition might be over, and the thought of France losing their captain and star man in the opening game was just wild. This one had a happy ending. Mbappe continued the rest of the competition with a mask. Son Heung-min's tackle on Andre Gomez, one of the worst sights you'll ever see. It's not like Son meant it, but it was brutal. Son was playing for Spurs when they went away to Everton in the league, and in the second half, just near the byline, Son went full in for a ball near the byline with Andre Gomez. But Gomez's foot ended up catching the turf, and the sight was so bad, it left Son in tears, and everyone around offering up prayers for a miracle. It still gives me chills looking at that tackle. Guess it's an occupational hazard that comes with the game. Thomas Müller almost made an opponent headless trying to win a ball. Bayern versus Ajax in 2019. Müller was in his usual competitive mode and chasing every ball. This one time the ball was up in the air and he didn't want to take any chances of trapping the ball and seeing someone intercept it. So Müller went high up with his boot, hoping he'd win the ball first. But I'm guessing he didn't see Nicolas Tagliafico just beside him, and by the time he did, it was already too late. The tackle was so bad that Tagliafico required multiple stitches after the game to sew his head up. I can't believe I'm saying this, but sometimes it's better when the tackle is as a result of a collision. Now, I'm saying this because watching Gavi tear his ACL is one of the most painful things you'll ever see. Gavi was playing for Spain on international duty versus Georgia in Euro 2024 qualifying. And when he plays, Gavi is the type of guy to go full in and leave everything on the pitch. This one time he went chasing a ball trying to regain possession for his team, but just seconds before he got to the ball, Gavi landed awkwardly. And he wasn't just limping because of it, he knew his leg was done. Leaving the pitch like that was a very painful sight. Gavi was done and his worst fears were confirmed. He'd done his ACL and was going to be out for over a year. Injuries can occur at any moment, I know, but it doesn't make them any less scary. Like the Gavi incident here, or the time Cristiano Ronaldo suffered the biggest scare of his career. Euro 2016, Ronaldo was playing for Portugal in the biggest match of his international career, the final versus France. The hopes of the entire country were on Ronaldo to find a way against the odds and beat the hosts. Ronaldo must have had a plan too, but only a few minutes in, he and Payet went for a ball, and boom. Ronaldo had popped his knee, and it wasn't looking good. He tried multiple times to get back into the game, but once he fell on the pitch one last time, Ronaldo knew the gig was up. He still wanted to give it one more go, until one of the medics told him Mr. Football had just released a new video on YouTube. He hopped on that stretcher and went straight down the tunnel. Ronaldo's injury and the whole stadium going nuts kind of reminds me of the moment from 2014 that threw the whole of Brazil into mourning. In the World Cup quarterfinals, Brazil was the hosts, and their hopes rested on a 22-year-old wonder kid called Neymar. He'd been key in getting them to this stage, but minutes into the quarterfinal and Neymar was in tears for a different reason. Juan Zuniga's tackle on him was so bad he couldn't walk. The doctors told him the bad news. His career was over, and they still told him the good news that if the injury had been 2 centimeters to the side, he might have never walked again. Neymar's one lucky guy, but he's been very unfortunate with injuries. I can't lie, this one playing for PSG looks very painful. You can see the pain in his eyes. The guy was tired of being injured almost all game. It's a scary thing to see a player you love in tears. At the Copa America last year, I saw La Pulga crying in front of the world, and it was scary stuff. Argentina's final versus Colombia. Messi was determined to give everything and put on a show in the final for his country. But the tackles he'd been suffering all tournament long had started catching up to him, and that picture of his ankle after he got subbed off, it looked horrible. And Messi was in tears all through. That image of him crying like that and having to celebrate with a knee brace, some scary stuff. What if it's the end? The Copa America was very heated, man, but it reached boiling point in the semi-final between Uruguay and Colombia. The ugly scenes ruined the beautiful game. The match ended 1-0, but it was what happened after the game that caught everyone's attention. See, the Uruguayan players had most of their family seated in the same section as some of the Colombian fans. I don't know who did the seating arrangements and all, but this was just asking for chaos. After full time, the Colombian fans went into rage mode, attacking some of the Uruguayan players' families. And since the security on hand wasn't solving the issue, the players took the situation into their own hands. A fight broke out. This was a brawl. Atletico Madrid's Jose Maria Jimenez described the situation. They barely managed to survive. Having to fight to protect your family instead of focusing on football, that slaps hard. I'm sure Angel Di Maria would have seen all this and paused a bit, especially after what happened to him back in 2021. Di Maria was playing for PSG versus Nantes in Ligue 1. You would have forgiven the guy for thinking his family and kids and wife were back home watching their dad play. But at half-time, Di Maria got a call that sent him into panic mode. His house had just been burgled. Robbers were at his home, and worst of all, his family was under attack. You can imagine the stress he was going through at that point. Suddenly, football wasn't the most important thing on his mind. The safety of his family came first. Di Maria had to get subbed off at half-time and rush home to protect his loved ones. That's an experience I can't even wish on my haters, man. Ouch. It's becoming an unwanted experience too. Football needs to fix up. The same thing happened to Pogba out in Manchester. Back when Pogba was still playing for the Red Devils in the Champions League versus Atletico Madrid, he came back to the news that burglars had invaded his home. And I'll just let you read the rest out yourself. The burglars were in our home for less than 5 minutes, but in that time they took from us something more valuable than anything we had in our home, our sense of safety and security. There's no way he'd have felt safe with his family after that episode. No wonder he wanted to leave. To be honest, this thing seems to be happening a lot in Manchester. Not just the red half of the city, but the blue half too. In late 2021, Cancelo was at home with his family preparing for Christmas when burglars found a way into his house. They terrorized him and his family and left him with facial injuries too. Still on this, they took valuable jewelry and important stuff from his house, all while his wife and kids watched. This stuff sounds scary and horrific, man. On the plus side, Cancelo came out unhurt. The time Luis Diaz was stuck in a similar situation, he was praying for a miracle. In late 2023, Luis Diaz was playing for Liverpool when he got the terrible news back home. A local gang had captured his dad and they were demanding a ransom in millions of dollars to release him. The situation was tense. Diaz managed to shoulder on and still played a couple of games for his team in all of this, but pretty soon it became too much for him. And lucky for him, Liverpool as a club understood, and they gave him the time off to try and rescue his dad. Let this sink in. Imagine being a star playing for one of the best teams in the world and having to worry if your old man is safe back home. That was Diaz's reality. Lucky for him, his dad was released later on. This was a happy ending. Andres Escobar, it wasn't. Now, Escobar was part of the Colombian team that played in the 1994 World Cup, but they didn't exactly set the tournament on fire. On his part, Escobar was unlucky enough to have scored an own goal in a must-win game versus the United States to seal a Colombian defeat and send them home. And well, some locals at home decided to blame him for it. Actually, these guys took it far because 4 days after returning from the World Cup, Escobar was found dead in a bar. Sad stuff. Wish he'd gotten a lifeline like this next guy did. Christian Eriksen. In the 2021 Euros, Denmark vs Finland, Eriksen was playing for his native Denmark with his country's hope on his shoulders. But a few minutes towards the end of the first half, in the 41st minute precisely, the roles were reversed, and it was Eriksen hoping for a miracle on the prayers of his fans. He'd gone down needing urgent medical attention. Eriksen had suffered a cardiac arrest, and it was the immediate rescue efforts of his teammates, particularly captain Simon Kjaer and the medical team, that saved his life. He's okay and back playing now. Incidents like this give you a new meaning to life outside football. I'm just thankful he survived. The same way I am for Tom Lockyer. What should have been a normal game between Luton Town and Bournemouth in the Premier League ended up becoming a game no one could stop talking about. Luton Town's Tom Lockyer grabbed the headlines for the wrong reasons. According to him, he was technically dead for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The guy admitted he didn't know what was going on and thought that was the end. Ouch. Lockyer came out of the episode and is still playing today. But at number 1, the scariest moment in football history, it's the guy who disappeared and never came back. Emiliano Sala. In 2019, the deal was all set. Sala had secured a move from Nantes to Cardiff City in the Premier League, and the plan was to book a private flight with British pilot David Ibbotson, flying him across the Channel River. But the flight that took off, well, it never landed. Sala sent out a series of distress calls, but it didn't reach anyone. He knew the plane was going to crash and complained about it to his family, but by then it was already too late. Such a sad ending to what could have been. This one reminds me of the day Ronaldo almost died, or the day a player lost his best friend on the spot. Click the next video to find out the 10 most emotional moments in football.